speaking of Nazis, can we talk a little bit about, I didn't get to read as much about it, but I saw the references about like the Nazi call centers. What's going on with the Nazi call
Yeah, okay,
centers?
great. Yeah, great story. Yeah. So like, yeah, it's one of my favorite stories that I wrote on, honestly. So, like to begin with, I guess it's just important. So, to begin with this in Ukraine, in all of Eastern Europe, in like what like there's not many jobs. Loads of people work in call centers, right? And also often call centers for gambling as well. Person I know, she worked at a gambling call center for a long time and all that shit as well. It's all like money laundering as well. Lots of it's involved with like all these gambling companies, and it's basically like a gray banking system and stuff. But
Mhm.
anyway, but then also there's a whole thing of scam call centers, which are really big in Ukraine. One interesting thing, like I mean, one interesting example of this shit is like there's this like the criminal, the evolution of the criminal scene in the post-Soviet world. There's like this top level organized crime guy, the Mexican, Russian guy, but he went to Ukraine in 2014 and started up all these call centers and stuff because he was imprisoned in Russia, but then he like left or whatever, and he went to Ukraine where he wouldn't be prosecuted.
Mhm.
Classic Russia-Ukraine story where like some freaks leave Russia and go to Ukraine. Same with the Nazis and stuff. But this is just an
Mhm.
organized crime guy. But he set up a bunch of call centers as well. But then he ended up leaving to Mexico, and Zelensky sort of shut down some of his call centers as a sort of show bust. But these call centers mainly centered in the city of Dnipropetrovsk, or Dnipro as it's been like Ukrainianized.
Mhm.
And this is one of Ukraine's largest industrial centers, the last kind of industrial center under Ukrainian control, essentially. I mean, obviously, other cities have industry as well, but as far as like the big two, these were like Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk. But this really became, I mean, look, when in Ukraine, everyone loves to accuse the other province of being like the most criminal province ever. And
Mhm.
this was always a big thing in like the 2000s, where everyone's saying like Donetsk, they're all criminals, they're all fucking, lumpen parasites.
Yeah.
But there are criminals everywhere across the world, not only in Ukraine, like it's not but anyway, but Dnipropetrovsk was a very important site for organized crime. And it's a very interesting city as well. Like in the Soviet times, it was actually a secret city. You couldn't enter the city because that's where
Okay.
they
So
produced the
top secret.
ICBMs
Yeah.
and
Okay.
top secret. And Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk. Donetsk is like, Donbass. That's where like, it's where like the separatists originally were and so on.
Mhm.
Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk, these were like cities that were fighting on this. These were like incredibly powerful cities in the Soviet Union. They were half of all of the, or like 70% of all of the officials in the US, in the Ukrainian Soviet Republic. They were all from Dnipropetrovsk by the end of the Soviet period. But also, like, Brezhnev was from Dnipropetrovsk,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So, like, you had this whole thing of the Dnipropetrovsk clan towards the end of the Soviet Union, where like all of these top officials were all from Dnipropetrovsk, and they were playing a really important, crucial, like they had their own sort of elite clan going. And Donetsk also did from the 30s. The Donetsk clan developed earlier on this because this was like the
Under
classic
Stalin.
Stalin
Industrialization
industrialization
period.
city,
Yeah.
the Stakhanovites and so on. And they had their own figures that were playing a top level in Soviet Union. Anyway, they always had this big conflict. And this is really the main kind of elite conflict in Ukraine
Mhm.
until Donbass got, separated, was between Yanukovych was kind of representative of the Donetsk clan, and then you
Mhm.
had Kolomoisky, who was a representative of the Dnipropetrovsk clan. And Kolomoisky is the classic example of these Dnipropetrovsk ultra mafiosi, sort of like, I mean, I'm not going to be anti-Semitic, but Dnipropetrovsk also has like a
A,
large sort of
a
Jewish
Jewish
community and so
population.
on.
Yeah. 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 One of those.
Kolomoisky set up like the biggest, I don't know, like some kind of big biggest Jewish center in the world or something. I don't even know.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, like it's all like it's not it's all like these mob connections and shit. But Dnipropetrovsk was really known for organized crime, all this sort of stuff, and it became a center for these scam call centers. They call them offices in
Uh-huh.
Ukraine. And there's a really, you guys should maybe play this song. Maybe it's a song about Dnipropetrovsk. It's a rap song. They always have it like in TikToks and stuff. And it's like Dnipropetrovsk, city of offices. It's like about like
Oh, okay. It's
Dnipropetrovsk
about the call centers.
office lifestyle and how everyone's on the. It's like pictures of like some kid on his laptop. But basically, the way that the offices are advertised, because they're like, so people praise these scam call centers, and this is like one of the only few ways to get work nowadays, working these scam call centers, because they claim to only exploit Russians. They claim, but this is not true. Like Ukrainian law
Uh-huh.
enforcement has shown many times that like they also fuck over Ukrainians and Europeans. But the thing is that everyone knows that they have a bunch of like each call center only exists because it has a patron in the secret services and law enforcement, whatever else. And then like the other thing is then, and I mean like one interesting explanation of like how these things work is I listened, I wrote about this in my articles, but like I listened to this interview by this scam call center veteran, whatever, and he was basically saying how they just keep on calling. Well, they call people and they confuse them about they convince them that they're the real bank and they need to give their details for some reason, and then they just take all of their money, all of their things. But what was really interesting, this is some like weird fucking program to kill type shit, where he was like saying how sometimes they'll break these people so fully that they obey any commands that are given to them
What?
by this Ukrainian call center. So there's like some person in some regional city in Russia that's just lost everything, lost their car, their apartment, all of their money, and is so humiliated by this experience that is they then use this person as an actor to convince other people that it's a real bank.
What?
So they'll like when they're scamming other people, they'll be like, "Hold on, our assistant can come meet you to have a consultation about the status of your credit card, since there are irregularities that have been noticed." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then the assistant comes along, but it's just a person that's been like essentially like enslaved spiritually or something by like the call center.
What the
Anyway, that
fuck?
was a
That's
really
so no, that's like dark. That's so
So they like
weird. Like,
deprive them of sleep and like
or did they kind of say
I mean
like,
the way
"Oh, you need to keep working with me, and we'll find out what happened to your money," or something like? Like, are they still kind of deceiving them?
probably
Okay, and then
I
but
don't know.
then
He just kind of he just sort of said that like we have these there are people. He's like you won't believe this, but we have people over in Russia. We've just they've become so broken through like the fact they've lost everything because they're haha stupid Russians. I'm sure they do the same shit with people in Ukraine as well. You know,
probably.
like I'm sure they
yeah.
got the same stuff. You know, I don't know. Maybe they keep them on some sort of trickle of I don't know who the fuck knows. But it's like yeah, some
I
real
guess
dark
that
stuff.
makes
But
sense in a way because like some people like are just like I remember reading that story about like that financial analyst like who fell for that scam like that the
Right.
CIA was like gonna come into her house and like scare her kids or something, ended up giving like some random guy in a car like her entire savings in cash to take out from a bank like $50,000 or something.
Yeah.
Something crazy.
Yeah, yeah, I remember.
And yeah, so I guess like if you're just accepting all these things, you know, and no one says anything to you, like I almost feel like you could like because in that situation, it was only like when she actually got into contact with somebody else that they were able to be like, you're being scammed, like you know, and then it was like humiliating and everything. So yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense. I guess it makes
Or
sense.
it's kind
how,
of
like,
you
yeah,
know,
you could
like
just
cult
be like hooked
dynamic
in.
of the kind of like when prophecy fails kind of cult dynamic of like you give your whole life up to like some guru or leader, and then like you're completely dependent on them, and you've also like lost all of your ability to like operate independently, so you kind of like fall in
Yeah,
deeper
true.
to
Like
like
you don't have any
fall.
money, so you might as well. Yeah, like you said, some kind of trickle.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
also like
yeah.
humiliation. I feel like it's like you don't want to
Exactly.
admit
Yeah. Admit it
Yeah.
like
to yourself. Exactly. That's another factor I think too. Like that.
so
I
Yeah, and
remember
also like
that was a
the
similar
yeah.
dynamic on actually now that I think about it, like I only watched this like during the peak like pandemic, but like 90 Day Fiance. I remember they had a guy who was like in love on the internet with some beautiful Ukrainian woman, and this is probably filmed in like 2019, so before the war, but that guy went like 2 seasons of that show, and it's like reality TV, so you never know, but they did seem to find like some weird people on this show and like follow them around. This guy was basically, it looked like he was working. He was like in a relationship with a call center, fake call center person, but had sent them like over $100,000 or something like that, like to his girlfriend who he had never met in person. And then he goes to Eastern Ukraine, like to a region near the Donbass, and like his car breaks down on some rural road, and he's like, "Oh, I heard there's like a civil war going on here," or something like that. And eventually they do manufacture, like the girl in the photo does actually like show up eventually to like meet with him, but it could be kind of thing like, "Oh, she's just an employee of the call center," and like they found out maybe they could get money by
Well,
being on
that's
an
kind
American
of like
reality
what
TV show, so they agreed to do it. But it was like staggering the level to which it's like they had people on the show trying to like say, "Hey, man, like I think this girl like might not be real, or she's like taking advantage." Like he was in total denial because like I guess he was on TV and didn't want to like feel humiliated by
Oh,
you know what I
sorry.
mean?
I actually had I just forgot about this. I actually had a friend, a close friend who worked for a couple days on this website where you basically pretend to be a model and you talk with
yeah.
people and you're their girlfriend, and they give you a bunch of they give you a bunch of like photographs of some real model, and you can like sort of
Yeah,
trickle them out to this person, but and you're talking with like 10 people at a time. And obviously, lots of these men, and these are like this is some depressing shit. 'Cause, like,
yeah,
these are like middle-aged men in the U.S. One of them was like talking about how like his family like didn't let him use his phone, but he's got his phone again, and he's gonna talk
Yeah.
some more.
yikes,
Right. No,
And
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's some
like
real dog
speaking
shit.
to
of
it.
speaking of
They're
Andrew
just
Tate, I
addicted.
feel like that was his whole business model, right?
Who?
Basically, Andrew Tate, that's like how he made all of his money by running a business like
Mm.
that, like
Oh yeah, I
webcam
think so.
models who
Yeah,
like
webcam.
seduce men and like
Hmm.
get or like quote unquote seduce, like get into like these sort of fake parasocial relationships with men and then like
Yeah,
ask
Mm.
them for money endlessly. And that's like and Andrew
Yeah.
Tate gives like the women like 5% of the money and he keeps it for
right.
himself and like buys a Bugatti.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
like
mean, I was
no,
just reading about
it's
the
yeah.
Hunter Biden, one of the Hunter Biden articles, and like that's what he would do, and he would lock himself in the bathroom and
Oh
smoke
wow.
crack all night, and then like try to call people, but if nobody picked up, he would just log onto webcam websites and like chat with like models and pay them tons of money. Like it's a bizarre behavior,
It's like an
but it
It's
does
some kind
addiction,
of
work.
yeah.
Yeah,
emotional. I think lots of them know that it's fake. Like lots of them know that the people they're talking to are not real,
Yeah,
but they just want some kind of like I don't know,
exactly.
some kind of thrill,
interaction.
some kind of emotional. They're talking to
Yeah.
someone real, but lots like I mean, like this person that I knew, they working at this company, and lots of the people that are behind these chats, they're like men or something, you know,
Right,
like
Yeah.
it's just like and you know the photos of these models, it's like the models don't even work at the company, they just
right.
paid them some money. I don't even, you know. So like it's just a business, you know, and people yeah. I mean, I also have another funny scam call thing where like I had this friend Ralph, this Zimbabwean guy who came from like the Zimbabwean like slums to Ukraine to work. He was working at like concrete factories. I like met him just randomly on the street, and we got drinks a couple times. He was a really cool guy, and first working at like concrete factories, and it was really shit. And he got like lots of crazy racist abuse. Like one time, like the concrete, like at the factory, they gathered all of the black guys and they gave them like an HIV test, an injection, and then they just sent them home. You know what I mean? Like
Jesus.
some
Yeah,
real evil
racist
shit. You know,
shit.
like and but then basically he got a job at a call center and got some good money. And but I remember like I met up with him and he was like, oh yeah, you know, basically what the job involved. This is in Kiev, right? So he I mean to be fair, like this guy's from like, you know, he's saving money for his like what's it, baby daughter or whatever in Zimbabwe, and his mother has like a funeral business he wants to like invest in, and they're like from like yeah, you know, so he's like making money. I respect it, you know, the grind. But anyway, like his job involves basically like they're calling it's like there's some kind of ads on YouTube videos. And it was like invest some money and you'll get X% return.
Hmm.
And this was in COVID, and there was no quarantine in Ukraine. So like we were doing whatever we want. But this was in COVID, and so but there were like Australians or whatever who were trapped, couldn't leave their home. And some pensioner was like, okay, whatever, fuck it, and put in his details. But once
Yeah.
you put in the details, you'll get calls from this call center every single day. And no matter, even if you change the phone number, they'll still be able to find your like IP address or some shit,
Oh
and they'll
my
call you
God.
again. So Ralph said that he would just be calling these guys every day, and they would drive them to mental exhaustion, and they would just break down. And they're like, okay, sure, I'll pay $150. And the way that the call centers work is like the call center is registered in France, apparently, but they have like a separate level on each level, like one level of Africans, and they all speak English. Another
Yeah.
level of like North African Arabs who speak French, and they call French customers, and so on, so on. And then Indians also who speak English and whatever.
Wow.
So it's like a serious big business. And the way it works is like if you get you need to like get I think like $700 a month to keep your job. Otherwise, they fire you. So it's like incredibly competitive. And
Jesus. Everyone, a lot of
and
drugs, I
Ralph,
bet. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Ralph was doing really well, and yeah, right now he's still in Ukraine, and he's just clubbing with all these Ukrainian snow bunnies all the time. You know, mad
Snow
respect.
bunny.
I don't know,
All right, nice.
like at some
Wow.
casinos and shit. He's like totally swagged out. He's got like this crazy he looks like some kind of stereotypical like pimp sort of thing going on. I mad respect to
Okay,
Ralph,
living it up. All right.
Yeah.
but I was telling him, Ralph, don't worry about it. Get these Australian parasites, fuck it. Because like, but yeah, no, it's an interesting world out there,
Yeah, I could see that
Yeah.
being like an instrument towards, yeah, like breaking somebody down. If you just endlessly spam call them, and like, I don't know why you would
Yeah.
like pick up and like engage with people who are doing that, but I guess some maybe
They're
older
like old
people,
and stuff as well, I
like,
think.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
very common, yeah, to just like target people like that, and it's some dark stuff. That's like the big growth industry right now.
But
Uh,
then, but then we got to get back to the call centers themselves. And like, I
sure,
mean, so they've become really big in wartime. And basically, what happened, like, there was one interesting thing in 2023, a video was released showing this like strip club party at a Petrov's office, and there were all these like naked strippers. What was interesting there, visible were Filimonov and Potoshenkov of Honor. And Potoshenkov is the guy with the swastika tattoo on his head and stuff who goes around the world with this the European Security Company, whatever it's called. Yeah,
hmm
European Security Academy. Sternyenko, he's like, also this is all the swastika. They're like hardcore Nazis, right? But
yeah,
so they're like high up in these office hierarchies and they're making lots of money off it. And then what happened was there was this really weird thing that happened. This was the reason I wrote this whole story, was because there's this guy, fucking Tishenko, who's like the funniest kind ever. So he's apparently he's actually Zelensky's drug connection. He gets drugs for Zelensky.
right,
I wrote about this in the meth come down thing, and he's just this ridiculous, really roided up, has a bunch of what's it called, like Botox in his face. People always joke about his ridiculous Botox face, and
uh-huh,
when the war started, he was like a Ukrainian government official. He went to Thailand and like posed on the beach for a while. But then like he said, oh no, I was doing a diplomatic trip, but it was just him like posing with pineapples and shit. This was like the beginning of the war, right? It's like
yeah,
hardcore stuff going on. Anyway, but he was known for always being close to Yermak, the shadow gray cardinal behind
uh-huh,
Zelensky, and also for apparently supplying Zelensky with drugs as well. And anyway, and Tishenko, who everyone just loves to make fun of because he's just so ridiculous, and he's always like declaring that basically he declared that he was going to wage a war against scam call centers, and he went to Dnipropetrovsk. This was like earlier this year,
hmm
and with like a weird private, like basically with his own private army, these
okay,
random people with guns, and he was just walking around with like 20 people with guns without any badges, just people with guns, and they were like walking around Petrovsk trying to like shut down the call centers. And they released a photo of them like shutting down some call center, and it was funny because one of Tishenko's guys has this big like fucking like swastika tattoo as well. They're all like they're all in it.
yeah,
But and he said that like these scam call centers are raising money for private armies to depose Zelensky in a coup. And he also made some kind of hints at the fact that these scam call centers are sponsoring the nationalists which oppose Zelensky, and also Poroshenko, ex-president Poroshenko, bot farms, because Zelensky is always talk like common Zelensky thing where he talks about how there are bot farms, like online bots that are
Hmm.
funded by his political opponents, like Poroshenko, to like besmirch Zelensky's honor. Anyway, so it seemed like
interesting.
there was some kind of that angle to this thing, but then there was this. Basically, Tishenko was walking around with his weird gang of armed militias, and they ran into this guy from the Kraken Battalion, which is this subdivision of Azov, really hardcore around the Kharkiv region, and also real hipster, funny looking guy. But he had this big fight with Tishenko on camera outside of this call center. And Tishenko said that this Kraken guy was defending the call center. But then what was really interesting was this fight happened on TV. Every single media outlet in Ukraine took the side of the Kraken guy, and they were like, fuck Tishenko. And because this guy, the Kraken guy, is a war veteran, he's an Azov patriot, and everyone took the side of him. Tales of the Fourth Reich was openly writing at the time that Tales of the Fourth Reich is this Azov telegram that
Yeah.
like the call centers are good, they fund us with money again and from by stealing from Russians, and fuck Tishenko, he's an idiot parasite. And then they ended up and then there was like some kind of weird trial where they raided Tishenko's house and they found money and they put him on trial. He was at a restaurant by the end of the evening anyway. it was some kind of stupid media display. Like, you know, this often happens in Ukraine, some bullshit story, but it's like basically a way to distract attention from like, you know, the front line collapsing, whatever else.
Mhm.
But it was just interesting in terms of like you can see how deeply these like right-wing nationalist networks are becoming involved in well, I think they always were very deeply involved in this scam call center world.
For access to the full-length episode, subscribe to the Hour of Frequency at patreon.com/subliminaljihad.
Доброго вечора, ми з України. Знову нам все мало зброї, бити москаля до крові, до закінчення набою, знищення гідоту, і не забудемо нічого, ні своєго, ні чужого, ні, брате, все дуже строго, в них немає нічого святого. Знову нам все мало зброї, бити москаля до крові, до закінчення набою, знищення гідоту, і не забудемо нічого, ні своєго, ні чужого.